this world is so broken. It's so divided. It's so desperate in its need of something better. And we are meant to be that better. But if we refuse to listen to someone that we deem the outsider or the other, if we refuse to see them in the light that God sees them, then it's two paths to the same end. We all have scripts that we've inherited from our families or our culture, from our politicians and newscasters, whatever it may be. And sometimes those scripts can sound like, hey, they don't belong here because they vote the wrong way. Or they don't belong here because they don't look like me. She can't be a leader here because she's divorced. They can't be with us because they're too liberal. They're too conservative. They're not our people. And here's the danger today, guys, is that when we use those scripts, we think we're protecting ourselves. But really what we're doing is we are robbing ourselves. We have let the world dictate and divide and pull us away from this beautiful fact that the very Son of God himself used an outsider's words to change the hearts, to expand the vision and the kingdom of its understanding to his 12 closest followers who would then go and change the world. And if we don't do that, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to hear the outsider's word in our lives that could reshape our faith, that could sharpen us, that could grow us, that could make us love more like Jesus. All in the name of protecting our interpretation of God, as if God needs your or my defense of him. We end up accidentally in this really proud place. So over the last couple weeks, I've been having various conversations with people online about everything, like with all of the Charlie Kirk stuff. And like we talked about last week, it'll never be okay for someone to be murdered for our beliefs, right? That's not what our country is about. And moreover, when someone's life is taken, the impact on that for people is profound and is worthy of grief. Somebody who's created in God's image should never be slain. But what I have found, what's been interesting in the things that I have struggled with personally, whether it was his rhetoric or behavior or some of those other stuff, when I've been having those discussions with people, all of the comments of like, you're not a real pastor, you're going to hell, I hope you get fired, you should expect a letter from Paul soon, which I would take that, that'd be fine. But all of those like critiques and those chastising and those like attacks on me, my character, my existence, all of them come from people who look like me. They all come from white folks. And then every other conversation that I've had, whether or not we've agreed or disagreed on the topic of like, yeah, I've struggled with that too, or that is a different nuance, and I was blah, 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 like all those other things have been from people of color. And it's created this really weird dichotomy in me because honestly, like I get very nervous to talk about this stuff because I don't like conflict for the sake of conflict. But what turned out, or I tried out at least, to be like these conversations turned into like this social experiment that I didn't mean to do. And what I have found is it has caused this stopping in me to go, am I a part of scripts? Or do I have narratives that I'm a part of that accidentally affirm like an us versus them mentality? Am I like a white guy looking around in the room just realizing like, oh, does nobody like me? Like I wrestle with that. And it has caused a lot of intentional stopping to pray and reflect and see like, is there something in me on two levels? One, as like a white person, as part of a majority culture that is either accidentally like reinforcing like this us versus them dichotomy. Is there like this weird benign racism that still flows through me or through the structures that I'm a part of, through evangelical Christianity as a whole that we need to deal with? Like, am I accidentally propping those things up? And then on a deeper level than that, are there things that I believe or that I'm reinforcing through my rhetoric as a follower of Jesus that are limiting the scope of who I'm allowing to speak into my world as an outsider, the person that I consider the other? And here's the reality. The answer is probably. We are humans. Our systems are made and run and occupied by humans. Therefore, our systems will always be broken. Our systems will always have a bias, a prejudice, some type of thing. And I know that individually we like to say like, yeah, we're pretty, we're trying our best to be as good as we can. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't know very many people anymore who are openly racist. Right? That's not a thing I see people championing too proudly too often anymore. Sometimes, but I try not to hang out with those folks. But there are still things in us that rile us up, that boil us over. And this doesn't just happen for us as white folks, this happens for all of us, right? We all have those things, but I'm thinking about from my perspective, right? From the way that I understand God, from the things that I'm trying to do, is there stuff that I'm missing? Am I othering people and as a result, not listening or missing out on something that God wants to do in my life? Because my understanding of who God would ever use to speak into my soul is too small. Am I keeping whatever my version of the Syrophoenician woman at bay? Now, I hope you'll stick with me here and not write me off, because I'm not trying to, see this as like a bad thing or break it down into like, you can't do this or you can't like that. It's nothing like that. It's a bigger question than that. Because like we said at the top, the reason I have grown to love Indian food is because I've spent time with Indian people who I met through the church, who took me to those places, who fed me the food. The reason I've been able to be with kids in places like Phnom Penh in Cambodia or Vietnam or in the Philippines is because there were folks there who took me in and showed me their culture and let me know ways that I could be a part of Jesus' story here. And that's the church. The church is the single greatest bastion for providing a different way to live and interpret reality when we do it correctly. And correctly means, in the example that Jesus lays out for us here, to be so intentional about decentering ourselves and giving the other the seat at the head of the table. To be willing to challenge ourselves and ask questions even if we don't find anything. But the willing heart to say, is there something in me that I need to repent of, that I need to change, that I need to get better educated on, or whatever it might be. And what I love most about being a follower of Jesus is that from every tongue, every tribe, every nation, the scriptures say, is what we will see in heaven. And thank God, because the two spices in my cabinet are salt and pepper. And there's a big, beautiful world of flavors out there that exist beyond what I know. And I may not have ever known them if the churches that I had been a part of and the leadership that I grew up in wasn't so profoundly intentional about creating spaces for hard conversations like this to exist, for us to love one another, to trade culture, to share, and to know that we're unified in Jesus. I have no reason knowing half the people that I know. They're way smarter than me, they make way more money than me, they're way more successful than me, and all of the things. I would never hang out with them, but it's because of this central unifying belief in Jesus Christ and his ministry. This is what it means for us to be a third-way church, if you're ever curious. It is a church that refuses to get pigeonholed in the one or the other that the world tries to force us into. It's this option that says, I'm going to center the person who I would consider my enemy, my other, and I'm going to love them like Jesus loved them. I'm going to pray for them like Jesus prayed for me. I'm going to take every thought that I have about that person, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, and I'm going to filter it through the lens that they are so beautiful and wonderfully and fearfully made, and they are so valuable to the creator of the universe that he came and died for them. That's the lens that everything gets filtered through. And if it doesn't pass that test, then we don't do it. Then we don't engage in it. Then we don't harm them. Then we don't say the thing. This world is so broken. It's so divided. It's so desperate in its need of something better. And we are meant to be that better. But if we refuse to listen to someone that we deem the outsider or the other, if we refuse to see them in the light that God sees them, then it's two paths to the same end. And then we are left with a Christianity, with a religion that is hollow and brittle and flatly not what Jesus came to this earth to do. So here's where we make it practical for this week. There's three things that I just want to tell you real quick. All right, the first, Determine who the other is in your own mind, right? You know who this is. For some of you, it's going to be that party or that candidate you despise. For others, it's racial, it's cultural, groups that you've grown up to be taught to be seen as suspicious. For some, it's socioeconomic, right? The wealthy that you might resent or the poor person you might dismiss, whatever. For others, lifestyle, right? People who parent differently, love differently, believe differently. And just be honest, because until you can name that other in your mind, you will never hear Jesus' invitation to release that script of them. All right, and then the second thing to do, commit to praying for that person or those people or that group this week. And this isn't a prayer to change them, right? God, make them suck less, make them more like me. It's not like that, right? Oh, to be fair, if that's where you are this week, pray that prayer. That's fine, right? Because at least you can admit to yourself that's where you are. I got a few people in my life that's where I am with, admittedly. All right? But pray that you would love them well, not to change them into your image, but that God would bless them, would show them grace and mercy and love. And in fact, if you're so bold, maybe even show you how much he already loves them. And then finally, if you can, take a step closer. All right, reach out for real conversation. Invite them to coffee, ask them about their story, listen before you talk, but please, for the love of everything, don't treat them like a project. Right? They're not something broken any more than you are that needs to be fixed. Right? Love them where they are, and that's how you get them. No, just kidding. All right? Here's the truth, right? If you never risk stepping towards the other, you'll never taste the wideness of God's kingdom. You'll stay safe, you'll stay predictable, and you'll stay small, right? But if we, as the church is not this place, the church is all of you. We just gather in a building. We could be outside on the grass, it would be the same thing. But if we as the church are willing to let Jesus stretch us, if we let the other words challenge us, or the outsider's words challenge us rather, what we discover is that the crumbs that we think are barely enough have always been more than enough to turn any type of stranger into family. And for that is something that is worth pursuing. That is a community that is worth building. And Tyre, the last word, didn't belong to the insiders. It belonged to the outside woman who refused to be silenced, right? And Jesus honored her with that healing. So may we be a community that pursues and does the same. May we honor the outsider's word. May we refuse to let prejudice, pride, or fear shrink our table. And may our unity be so wide, but still so centered on the person of Jesus Christ and all the things that he declared, that when the world looks at us, right, these crumbs turn into a feast.